how many homes, like when we met with somebody, I would have my assistant go back 10 years and make sure any home on their street we would know about. Because we don't ever want to sit down where the seller knows more information about something than we do. Okay,
Yeah.
so first off, market knowledge is critical.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We have a super awesome, amazing friend of mine, David Hill. He's a 10X business coach, and he runs a podcast called The Path to Mastery as well. And David, you are an absolute superstar in the 10X world. A lot of people look to you for advice, and I'm super excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Good to see you, man. Good to see you again.
Likewise, man. Likewise. When we first met, we really sort of bonded on the physicality side of things. I know you're going through some journey on some of the things you're doing for training and fitness and that sort of thing. And you're coming in strong. You're training every morning. And then we got to know each other around the real estate side of things, and then just getting a lot of insight from you on business and practices and stuff. So I think we got a lot of topics we can cover on the show today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'd love to let's jump into it, man.
So you started off really, I mean, at least from what I know, is in the real estate space, and you really kind of grew a great success in there. Let's talk a little bit about the journey there so people can kind of get to know you a little better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking going back to 2001, my daughter back then was 10 years old. She came home and she said, "Dad, you should get your real estate license. Mom's friend makes a lot of money selling real estate." I was like, yeah. Like, first thought was like, do I not make enough money for you? But then, anyway, I didn't say that, obviously. Next morning I woke up, it was on my mind for whatever reason. It was probably the best piece of advice I got. I was working for the family business back then. We owned, my family owned a publishing company. I was definitely one of those underappreciated, underpaid family employees, overworked.
Yeah.
And I wasn't loving it. So I got my license. I was lucky. I joined a team. I didn't stay on the team very long, but I'll tell you what the team taught me. He taught me to go after for sale by owner listings. And in a lot of ways, the reason I say I'm lucky is because I know a few other agents that started at the same time as me, and they went through the real estate licensing course, and they joined other companies, and the other companies had them start with open houses. And most of them fizzled out of the business, where I had no idea. I could, maybe if I would have went to another company, they would have said, start with open houses, right? But the team I joined, they told me to start with for sale by owners. So literally my first day in the office, I was calling for sale by owners, focusing on sellers, and I learned right out of the gate, hey, these are the people that have their hands up, focus on listings. I got listings. Literally got listings my first month in the business. I had buyers coming to me. I had other sellers coming to me. And my business and I ended up being in the top 100 at Keller Williams and Gary Keller's mastermind for
Amazing.
4 years. And it was a great, great experience. And I believe it all started with just focusing on listings.
Yeah, a lot of real estate agents, when they first get into the business, I mean, I won't say you can go down two paths, but there can be two very strong focuses. And a lot of, agents get taught that buyers are the first thing you need to focus on. And then later on, you can start focusing on listings. And I think, Gary Keller is certainly, at this last family reunion, he reiterated exactly what you're saying, which is listings, then listings, and then listings. And once you do those three things, then you can focus on more listings. And so I think, it's definitely a resonate. Why do you think that is? Why is that so important?
Did Gary change the 3 L's to, instead of leads, listings and leverage, to listings, and listings?
He might make that adjustment, but I felt like it was that way. Yeah.
Well, listen, I will say that Gary Keller has been probably the most influential person on me in my career. It was such an opportunity to spend, all those, being in his mastermind for those 4 years, to be able to meet with him. I think we met twice a year in his group, and I learned so much, and just, at the end of the day, I left Keller Williams, not because of Gary, because of local leadership things. But I'll tell you what, man, I give a lot of credit to Gary. what he built. And even today, I swear to you, I email Gary, he responds to me right away, man. Still. And Jason Abrams is another good dude. I'm sure you know Jason.
Oh
Jason's a
yeah,
really
yeah,
good
yeah,
dude, man. So I
yeah.
believe Keller Williams is my family. If I don't think I'll ever affiliate with a brokerage again, but if I do, I promise you it'll be Keller Williams if I
Yeah, no,
decided. I don't think I would, but
your culture is so in alignment with the Keller Williams culture of give, give, give. And that's
yeah,
something that, they don't put up barriers of who they're going to teach or who they're not going to teach. And they just give to the community because they know that a better real estate agent across the board is just better for everybody. So, when everybody goes to the
yeah,
training or something, they're like, oh, I'm sneaking in. It's like, no, it's by design. And it's to help
yeah,
everybody better. But the thing is to learn from
100%.
somebody who's learned from that, and not only has learned from that, but has created success through that. I think that's critically important. That not only you absorbed the material, but you actually did the actions to get to be one of the top
Yeah,
100. And that I think is the differentiator between somebody who's sort of pretending and somebody who's actually seen that success. So I think that's
yeah,
important when you're looking for somebody who's actually going to teach you something.
absolutely. Yeah. So, and I forget what your question was. I apologize. I went on a tangent. You asked me a question, and
No, we were talking a little
um,
bit around the idea of leads and why listings are your
oh,
most important lead, because and second and third. Why is that?
yeah. Well, because listings are leverage, right? That's what I learned when you have the listing. Like this is the easiest example I give everybody. Like my last year selling real estate, 2019. Okay, I was listing properties. There was no inventory in Massachusetts. I would list a property, and sometimes I would get 35 to 40 offers. Okay, now you got to think about this. Yeah, is that a pain in the butt? Sure, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, now that means if there's 40 offers, that means there's 40 other agents that are doing the best job they can. They're investing their time, they're investing their energy, they're showing buyers properties, they're consulting them, they're doing a bit. No matter how good of a job they're doing, they all could be fantastic, but only one of them can actually get the property. Right? You think about that. That means 39, no matter how great they are, they will lose out on that deal. But me as the listing agent, I get paid every single time. That in
Absolutely.
itself should tell anybody, like, you need to be the listing agent. It is absolute leverage. Besides that, the other sellers in the neighborhood, they see you listing, they end up calling you. Now, buyers are getting smarter now. What buyers are doing now is saying, you know what, I'm just going to go right to, well, they've been doing that for a long time. They go right to the real estate, to the listing agent. So it brings buyers, it brings other listings, it gives you market, you get to market exposure, it's marketing. I mean, it's everything. It's everything, Steve. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't know. In 2009, I made a commitment that I will never work with another buyer again. And because I'll be honest, I did work with some buyers in my first, 7 or 8 years in the business. I was doing
Yep.
both. I'm not going to lie. And then I got to a point where I'm like, man, this just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yep.
I mean, you try going to the beach. Just try leaving for the weekend with 6 buyer clients. See what happens. You can't even do that. You could have
Yep.
26 listings, and you can go to the beach for the weekend, and they're all it's handled.
Yeah. Well, especially today. I mean, back in the day when I started in real estate, 2012, and you were obviously much senior to that, much. Just kidding. And
Oh yeah, I started in 2001. It's not like that much, but yeah, you're right. I got some
but
seniority.
seniority, we'll get the wheelchair and we'll get you in. And
Come
but
on,
the
man.
but the idea is back then when we were doing listings, you'd have to press hard 3 times, press hard for the 3 copies. And back then when you were booking showings, you'd have to take the call and you'd have to organize, you have to call the tenant, you have to call, there was a lot of work that had to happen. Now you can hire to that as well, but there was a lot of back end stuff that we take for
Mm,
granted today when it comes to real estate. I mean, the fact that DocuSign is there, the fact that you've got Showing Time or Broker Bay or whatever, showing systems that are out there, all these tool sets that are out there for the listing agent to become even more effective. That you're right. When you decide to go to the beach, you've got a whole system behind you. You've got your tech, you've got your people, you've got your models, and those things are all supporting you. When you're a buyer's rep, you're in the car and you're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense.
It's my wife, my wife's still in the business. She's awesome. She's an awesome agent. She loves her. She cares so much about her people. Like, Grant messes around with me, like Mr. Nice Guy. That's my wife. My wife really is Mrs. Nice Lady. She's too nice. And she works with, half her buyer clients should be fired. And they just waste so much of her time. And she's, oh my God, I don't want to say anything. I'm like, I'm not going to get myself going. Sorry. but
the idea,
it is. I mean, you just end up wasting. You can waste a lot of time. Right now, inventory is low where we're at. It just can be tough. There's nothing wrong with. I don't have any issue with buyers. As a matter of fact, some buyers, Steve, have homes to sell. Those are my favorite buyers, right? Because they have homes to sell. So
absolutely,
you don't want to ignore them. You want to find out if they have homes to sell. If they have a home to sell, then be their friend. If they don't, then kick them out. No, I'm just kidding.
There's something to be said around the idea that when somebody has a vested interest and already has made a decision to do something, the history would tell you that they have a higher degree of making another decision like that. If they've never bought a house before, the idea is you're now convincing them the idea of buying a house. Somebody who already owns a house already knows the intrinsic value of doing that. So dealing with somebody who's already made a decision to do something, that's just good common sense in any business practice. So I think that unto itself is something smart to point that out, to say that you're working with people who've already made the decision to do something.
Well, not just that. The fact that they have a home to sell, though, means they're not just a buyer, but they're also a seller.
Yep.
So that's,
absolutely.
I think that should be also a takeaway for people listening, that when you're doing an open house, like we were trained at the end of not to just do an open house like, hey, I'm sitting there trying to sell my listing. No, I'm looking for more sellers coming in.
That's right.
Because half the buyers that walk in that house have homes to sell. So my conversation sounds different than most of the realtors that are just sitting there at the open house with a newspaper saying, okay, let me know. No, I'm asking questions. I'm figuring out if they have a home to sell. Do they have an agent? Can I get them an analysis? Right? Like I'm going through that whole process, Steve, with everybody that comes in the house, looking at them as they're a seller.
That makes so much sense. Now, when you look at the idea, and I think that goes down to the next thing, people are now saying, you know what, I really understand this value of being listings focused. And some of us think it's just obvious, but it's one of those things where some people go, aha, that's an aha moment. And so what would you say in today's market? Because we know the markets have gone through many different shifts, but in a 2024 world, what would you say is the top 3 ways that somebody could enhance their business to really focus on getting and attracting and securing listings?
Wow, good question. I think first I would say mindset. I know it sounds kind of like, woo-wah, but get your mindset straight first, that okay, I'm going to focus on listings, and see, focus means I'm focused on this and I'm gonna let everything else go. And that's where most people get stuck. Because they're like, well, I'm gonna focus on listing. Oh, but my buddy John's cousin called and they want to look at homes. So I'll just go show them homes this weekend. Well, that's not really focused on listings, right? So number 1 is get your focus right. All right. Number 2 is figure out where are the most motivated sellers. All right. Like, so if you're going to focus on seller listings, then why it only makes sense to go after the most motivated. And then number 3, you need a good system. You need a good process so that when you do connect with them, you sound intelligent. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You sound like a professional, right? We just did a whole webinar on being a professional, like, because there's a lot of competition out there as a real estate agent. So you got to know your market. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to understand marketing. You got to understand exposure. You got to be able to ask great questions. I mean, I know there's a lot there, but I think if those are probably the 3 is again, get your mindset right, focus on the right sellers, and then be a professional.
So if we're looking, you're going to break those down a little bit. First of all, we look at mindset, and we're saying, what do they have to fix when it comes to mindset, or what do they have to focus on when it comes to mindset to ensure that that's a check mark in the whole process?
Yeah, great question. Abundance. I think you got to focus on a mindset of abundance that,
Mm-hmm.
even though I may choose to refer this buyer to somebody else, I'm not missing out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if I'm focused, if I say I'm going to be a list, like when I was just talking about this earlier today, when I met with sellers, I was a listing specialist. That's what I referred to myself as a real estate agent. Not a real estate agent, a listing specialist, meaning I did not even work with buyers. If buyers came into my team, Justin Jarbo ran our buyer department. I don't care if it was a $16 million buyer lead that came in.
Yep.
My focus was Justin handles the buyers. That's the mindset I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
When you
so
talk
to
about,
me, it's like
yeah.
making that commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that you did, and you sort of said this without saying it, is you have to, in your mindset, think with abundance, because scarcity, people can smell scarcity. Number one, you're thinking about yourself. Generally, when you're thinking scarcity, you're not thinking in abundance when you think about other people. But number two, what you did is in thinking about abundance, you followed the model of, and you already said it without even saying it, of running a business, right? You are actually running a business. A lot of the real estate franchises, they talk about real estate agency as a job, not as a business. And what you immediately did is you said, I'm referring it out to my team. Well, instantly you have a team, and so the idea of
Mm,
saying that you have somebody you're referring to that you trust, you've got a system and model for success for that person because you want the success for the client. And so the fact that you've built out a team to be able to handle that so that you can focus and make the one thing, I think that's extremely important.
yeah, 100%.
Now, when you go to the next thing and we start talking about the idea of honing in on the next element, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think, like I said earlier, for me, I got lucky in a lot of ways because I could have joined Steve's team, the guy, and he might have said, "Hey, you're gonna door knock." I don't know, whatever he said, I would have done, right?
Yep.
I got lucky. He said, "You're gonna call for sale by owners." Great. I had experience on phones anyway. It worked out perfect for me. But a lot of agents, they got advice is we're going to have you man open houses because that's all you said it in the beginning. I think that's all you really should start off doing until you get to a better place you can take listings. That is bad advice, man. It's bogus advice. It's straight bogus. I'll debate that with anybody. I don't care how long they've been in the business. Nobody has to start with open houses. I'm the perfect example of that. But now it's not just starting with sellers, but start with the right sellers. So, like for me, it was for sale by owners. Why? Because they're difficult. They're even more difficult today than they were back then, to be honest with you.
Yep.
But they are motivated to sell. So if you learn
Yep.
how to communicate with them, learn how to ask great questions, listen, follow up, you can be effective with them. And then we ended up transitioning to expired listings. Because again, you're talking about a motivated type of seller.
Yep.
And then be in touch with all the people and when you're talking to them, Steve, the questions you're asking are about listing homes. So it's not just like, hey, who do you know that's looking to do real estate, but hey, who do you know that's thinking about selling a home right now?
Yeah.
Who do you know that's
That
thinking about selling a multifamily? So your conversations are around listings, and I think when you do that, you set yourself up. So that's what you're attracting to yourself.
that makes total sense.
Does it?
And I
Yeah.
like the idea of, number two is focus on the motivated buyer. The idea that you're
Seller.
trying, or sorry, motivated seller, that's what I meant. And so the idea is you're saying, I'm looking for somebody that I don't have to motivate to do something. I think we were talking about this a
Mm.
little while ago in one of the Grant Cardone sessions, is that, is motivation. There's something to be said about motivation. There's something to be said about discipline, and discipline shows up when motivation doesn't. And the idea is somebody's going to be disciplined to sell their house when they're already motivated, but they need something to actually action it. And especially if they said, I've tried, I failed, I still want it, so they still have the motivation. You're just coming in with the systems and models to actually make it come together. You don't have to convince them of anything on that side to sell.
Well, yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think I got it from Zig Ziglar maybe, or Jim Rohn says you can't motivate people. You just find motivated people, something like that. It was
Yeah,
a lot more
absolutely.
eloquent than what I just said, but yeah, it was, you know,
Well,
but
that's
at the end of the day, right? You can't like I can't motivate somebody to do something that they don't want to do. I just have to go find motivated people, which is what you just said, right? Like,
yeah. Absolutely.
and
And
that's
there's
it.
many different ways to look at for motivated people, whether it's people who are getting divorced, people who have a relocation, people who are,
Yeah.
maybe growing family, all these things that put pressure on wherever they're living in. If a development's coming in to knock down the apartment building they live in, whatever it is, there's people who are motivated, right? We've had it in Toronto where you have that building, they buy it, they love it, and now the building goes up and blocks the view to the lake. Well, guess who's going to be motivated to sell? The buyer coming in has no difference. They see the place, that's the view that they got. But the seller always
Mm,
remembers that view that was there, and they're ready to get out. And so finding, it doesn't matter whether it's a FISBO or whatever, there's a lot of different ways to find people who are motivated. You just got to figure out where they congregate.
100%.
Awesome. And let's go on to the next topic. So let's hit that one. Give me a little bit more information around that.
So you mean being a professional?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was earlier today. I did a webinar for real estate agents how to make multiple six figures, focus on listings, and one of the slides we share is everything that it takes to be a professional. And one of the first things is market knowledge. Like a professional is going to show up and they're going to know all the homes in their market. See, and this is something we don't always talk about. Like a lot of times we talk about sales skills and scripts and handling object, which are all important. But do you know every property in your market that's sold? Do you know who's coming into your market through like what's that thing called when people are coming from other areas of the country?
Who's emigrating?
Not absorption.
Yeah.
Yeah, immigration pattern, right? Is that what
Mm-hmm.
it? Not
Yep.
immigration, but
It would be
migration
immigration.
pattern
Yeah.
is what it's called. Migration pattern. When people, it's like, where are people migrating from to your area? What is the average sale price in your market? What are the average days on market in your market, right? Days to offer in your market, right? Like how many homes, like when we met with somebody, I would have my assistant go back 10 years and make sure any home on their street we would know about. Because we don't ever want to sit down where the seller knows more information about something than we do. Okay,
Yeah.
so the first off, market knowledge is critical. The second one is, you have to be confident in yourself, right? So, you dress well, be clean shaven, be sharp, be your shoe, everything, all the details matter.
Yeah.
Don't have a junker car, right? Like I mean, you don't need to drive a super nice car, but at least have a respectable car that's clean, right? It's like just detail stuff. Know your presentation, know your company, believe in your company. You know how many agents I've spoken with that are at companies like, oh yeah, my company kind of sucks, but yeah, I'm here because my manager's cool, or my friends are here. No, you got to
Yeah.
be at a company where you believe your company is the best thing going since sliced bread. Otherwise, it's going to show up on the other end. The sellers are going to be like, something doesn't seem right because
That's
you're
right.
not sold on yourself and you're not sold on your company. So when I say being a professional, that's really what I'm talking about. All those little detailed things combined. Show up on time, right? If you say you're going to be somewhere at 3 o'clock, then be at the door at 2:58. Okay, and let them know, hey, we had an appointment at 3. It's 3 o'clock. Here I am, right? Confirm
Yep.
your appointments. All the little detail stuff to me is what being a professional is, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think, you started off with, I think, one of the most important things. I think a lot of the other things put sort of the icing and all that stuff on the cake. But the idea that you actually know what you're talking about, I think is extremely critical. At the end of the day, you're transacting somebody's typically largest asset that they own. And so if you're doing that, they have to have the confidence that you actually have the skills to do it. And the easiest way is just do your homework. Like if you do your homework and you do exactly what you're saying, like look things up, you don't need an assistant. When I was my first year of real estate, I sold 40 some odd transactions in real estate. And so for me, like I did all the homework for every single one of those. And so I made sure when I showed up the door, I knew what the solds were. I knew what the average cost to build was. I knew what, I know a heck of a lot about construction. So I could look at, what is the cost model of what somebody's going to be thinking about when they walk into your house. So they know that the furnace needs replaced. They know this and this. So here's all the added costs that they need to know or they're thinking about potentially when they're buying your real estate. So when you think your house is worth 1.2 million, but it needs a $400,000 facelift, that's a $1.6 million purchase that they're going to be thinking about, not a 1.2. And so you need to know about that when you're going in so you can price accordingly. And I think, Gary Keller talks a lot about that, your pricing strategy is critical. It's critical in these markets. In the last 2 years, I think a squirrel could have sold a house, in Canada, because it was just, the market was just so hot. It didn't matter if it had a sign out front or didn't, the thing was going to sell. This next year that we've gone back to the basics, I think a lot of real estate agents are realizing that it's a different market. And I think, people, I think it's some scary number in Canada that it's like 40 or 50% of real estate agents, that are active today had got their license from basically the month before COVID and on. And so they don't know anything other than a hot seller market. And so having somebody like yourself with that experience of what does a market look like? What does a low market look like? What does a hot market look like? It's extremely important to have.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100. And even the team I joined, he didn't teach me any of that. He taught me to go after for sale by owners. And it's funny because if you, the first 2 listing appointments I went on with him, he didn't take either of them. And so the system didn't even work, but he still taught me an invaluable, lesson and
Yeah.
to focus on motivated people.
Yeah. Well, I took other swings at bat and was able to hit it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So what other things would you like to impart? I think those are some really good strategies for somebody thinking or in the real estate space. What are some other nuggets that we could just drop as some takeaways, some last minute that we haven't covered that you think is extremely important?
Man, I think you did a good job. I mean, everybody that knows me in the real estate space, and some people get mad at me because I'm just like listings only. Like I'm a Bitcoin guy, but I'm not. It's weird because if you understand the Bitcoin community, there's like maxis that are like, if you anything else is like shitcoin, right? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily like that. But in real estate, I am like that. Because I'm like, buyers are great. I just don't work with them. So I think focus. And I think as the industry changes and evolves, and we're going through a huge transition right now with the lawsuits with NAR and everything else. And I think you guys in Canada are feeling the same thing, right? Or if you haven't, it's coming. You're going to start to see a lot more pressure on not paying buyers agents. And so I think the opportunity really is to figure out now how to get focused on listings. And if you look at the travel industry, I think to me, it's always been a kind of a metaphor where real estate kind of going. There's still travel agents, but there's not as many. And you're not going to go down to a travel agent's office anymore, sit down with them and have go through paper. You go, the process is just a lot different now. So that's all. I think
Google flights and you're gone, right?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I don't know that it's going to be completely that in real estate, but it's definitely evolving. And I think the focus, the opportunities, listings right now, that's my thought process.
Awesome. And now I know you run a couple programs around with agents. Talk to me a little bit about that and how could people get a hold of you if they want to take a look at your programs?
Yeah, so probably the biggest question I get asked is, can you help me, figure out how to get these listings and find expireds? And yeah, we have a community. It's called realestatelistings.club. It's called Real Estate Listings Club. The domain is realestatelistings.club. Anybody can check us out there. We have agents all over the country. We collaborate 4 days a week. There's a Zoom meeting every morning. And then there's 120 built-in lessons online on demand, similar to for people that have used Cardone University, it's kind of our version of that, but for real estate specific. And yeah, it's a great tool. So I mean, if anybody is interested in that, can reach out to me or reach out to Steve, and Steve knows how to get in touch with me too, if you
100%.
want. And Yeah, I think that's the best way. I'm David I. Hill, by the way, on all socials. Every social is David I. Hill. My website's David I. Hill. So I'm pretty easy to get in touch with.
Beautiful. Well, David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And I think just the collaboration around, where we both come from through it's great to see that and see where we're both at right now. And I think the offer that I think you've given right now is very sage advice. And I think for people to reach out to you at David I. Hill and go to your realestate.club, realestate.club
Real
is
estate listings.
listings.club.
Yeah.
We can't forget the listings. And real
Yeah.
estate listings.club, I think, is extremely important. And guys, reach out to them and make it happen. And this is now the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, brother.